The end of the Grounded game preview period is almost here. In less than 2 months, Grounded 1.0 will be released and introduce a completable line of story quests, a fully explorable yard of unique biomes, new gear, new creatures, new bosses, and probably more. Grounded's already garnered the attention of millions of gamers worldwide as a pre-release beta with its original setting, adventurous art style, and adaptable action-adventure themed, crafting survival-related game mechanics. I've already covered in my last video everything about the Grounded game preview that makes it such an enjoyable experience, and I've conveniently linked that video in the description for your viewing pleasure. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about Grounded's future.
We're sending you back to the future!
Because even though Grounded's already an amazing game, I still think it has a ton of potential for additional features and content that could be used to enhance the gaming experience even more.
Sir, I think he means he wants you to release his hidden potential.
Yeah, that.
Fine, stand still. It's your first time, so I'll be gentle. Now relax as I reach deep inside you and grab hold of your essence.
I need an adult.
I am an adult!
How much hidden potential? Well, who really knows, except for maybe someone at Obsidian Entertainment, like this guy.
Who knows what the future, there's so many cool ideas, Grounded world can be infinitely expanded on.
Just look at games like No Man's Sky or Minecraft. Both of those titles continue to generate new content for their ever-growing gaming communities many years since their 1.0 releases, proving that the only limitations for a video game in the modern era are the limitations it sets on itself.
I'll never be a hero. I'm just an ordinary guy, and I've reached my damn limit!
Your limit? Who decides what your limit is? Instead of overthinking your setbacks, just focus on moving forward.
With all of that being said, this video is going to cover 10 ways that I think Grounded could be even better than it already is. But before we get into today's list of game-changing suggestions, if you're a fan of Grounded-themed, Grounded-related content presented in tutorial format, then you found the right channel, because that's basically all that I do here, and if that interests you, then defeat the like button with a tactically timed 3-hit combo, and I hope that this video earns your subscription today. Number 10. Proximity crafting was an amazing feature when it was initially introduced into the game. It allows you to craft gear at your workbench by pulling resources from nearby storage boxes rather than only from your limited backpack inventory. It also works with many of the utility crafting stations like grinders, spinning wheels, ovens, smoothie stations, and glue factories, allowing them to be reloaded rapidly to maximize productivity. But it doesn't work with the Jerky rack.
Isn't that weird?
The Jerky racks still need to be reloaded manually, which brings us to our first suggestion, that the user interface of Jerky racks be improved like the rest of the utility crafting stations to work within the proximity crafting system, and possibly even a boost to the production queue from 3 to 5, much like what was done with the spinning wheels when their UI was updated. Number 9. We're gonna stick with those utility crafting stations like a Splatburst for a minute here and talk about the tradition of reloading them all. You take the finished product out, you reload the resources using the proximity load on everything except the Jerky rack, and then you wait and repeat.
As is, of course, the tradition.
And depending on the amount of utility stations in use or the size of your individual builds, this process can seem to take forever.
Forever.
In an attempt to make this tradition less time-consuming, I think a system of automation could be implemented that would allow production utilities like spinning wheels and ovens to be connected to storage boxes using a series of vacuum tubes. These one-way tubes could be connected from an input chest that would feed resources into the production queue of a utility station, and then an output tube that would deposit the finished product into another separate interconnected chest. For example, a tube running from a chest of plant fiber feeding into a spinning wheel would keep the production of crude rope going as long as plant fiber existed in the input chest. Likewise, another chest could be connected to the spinning wheel that would pull the completed crude rope out of the finished queue and deposit it into the output chest, allowing the wheel to function automatically without the need for constant continual reload. This system of one-way directional vacuum tubes could also be used to automate more complex production systems like the mushroom bricks by connecting input chest to grinder, then grinder to oven, then oven to output chest. I don't know how complicated programming a system like this would be, but I do know that automation for utility stations would be a welcome quality of life improvement by the players.
And knowing is half the battle.
Doing it is the other half. So, you know.
Do it! Just do it! Number 8.
Sometimes they're too fast and other times they're too slow, and the process for building these zip lines can be tedious and troublesome. You gotta build monolithic sized terrifyingly tall towers and then build ladders or stairways to get to the top of them, which can also seem to take forever depending on how tall your towers are.
Where are we? It looks like we're in the teens somewhere.
But when we get to 20, tell me. I'm gonna throw up.
And if you do manage to get your zipline angled in that Goldilocks zone where it's not too fast and it's not too slow, then you gotta repeat that entire process all over again to make it a round trip before your transportation system is just right. You can also build bounce web elevators using a building mechanic exploit, which will get you to the top of the towers faster, but will still be a massive construction endeavor on your part. To alleviate the necessity of building a return trip zipline tower, I think a great later game reward for players could be a zipline tool, handheld pulley thing? I don't know what this is called, but it's this thing I'm showing in the video right now. This device would allow zip lines to be multi-directional and would create a uniform speed regardless of the angle, which could solve the problem of certain angles being dangerously fast or obnoxiously slow. It could be implemented as a mobility reward for players who have already reached certain points of the critical path to prevent exploitation along the quest line, and its addition could come in the form of a higher tier zipline anchor or as a tool used from the inventory. It could even fit into the scientific lore of Grounded by being called a zipper and being made to be one of Wendell's inventions. Because I find it hard to believe that a super scientist genius inventor capable of constructing a shrinking machine wouldn't also design a blueprint for a handheld motorized pulley device, considering that his primary method of miniature mobility appears to be by zipline. Coincidentally, it also works cohesively well with this next suggestion because
Number 7.
The bounce web elevators are a fun building exploit that players discovered very early in the game preview. And considering that they can still be built, the dev team must like them enough to not patch them out of the game, not yet anyway. And maybe they won't, who knows?
Infinitely expanded on.
Oh yeah, he might know. But even if they did, the zipline tool from the last suggestion would allow for travel along vertical angled ziplines, essentially creating a functional elevator system. Like a real elevator system, not a bouncy one.
But hey, that's just a suggestion. A Tiny Pirate Gaming suggestion. Thanks for watching, and...
Number 6.
These next suggestions are for the builders in the community who are likely going to be a bit salty with me about my last two suggestions beating down on their beloved bounce web towers. So instead, let's talk about walls, or more specifically wall angles. Unlike the floor and stair pieces, which can only clip onto other sections with 4 directions, walls are able to be placed at 45-degree angles, which allows for builds to be constructed with a variety of shapes and designs. However, these slanted walls can become problematic when clipping with other build pieces which lack the additional rotations. This problem in regards to floors and roof pieces is overcome with the triangular shaped blueprints and half floors, but this cannot be said for doors or stairs. Additional rotations for some of these pieces would likely make building in Grounded more enjoyable and allow for further creativity from the building community. Additionally, half vertical walls would also be helpful for filling in gaps left by builds with asymmetrical designs. Single square floor pieces as well as half size and 1/4 size foundations to work cohesively with the half floors would also be highly coveted building options. Or my personal favorite build suggestion, single block slanted corner pieces to fill out the edges on pyramid style designs. And maybe there's a lesson to be learned from these happy accidents and allow for sap collectors to be built off of some sort of sap farm anywhere on the map as a higher tier building unlock, considering how much sap is likely to be needed to craft the toughened style nuggets. And since we're talking about farming utilities, it feels like the perfect time to bring this up.
Number 5.
Being able to grow plant fiber, clover, sprigs, and the mushroom variants from the garden patches currently available in the game is a convenient way to ease the grind on the player for those lower tier resources. However, resources like grass stalks, weed stems, fungal growth, and mussel sprouts seem like the perfect candidates to be added to the garden patch collection, or could be grown in a higher tier garden patch as a later game building reward to further ease the grind for higher tiered resources as the player progresses further along the critical path.
Number 4.
You know what this inventory is missing? An extra row of slots. With a few simple adjustments to the user interface, an extra row of inventory slots could easily be added. But I don't just want these inventory slots, that's childish. I need to earn these inventory slots with some of that
delicious magical science.
Science.
Hail science!
Similar to No Man's Sky, these inventory expansion slots could be purchasable via the Burgle Swap Shop, with each additional slot costing increasingly more raw science to purchase. This would provide an additional reason to complete Burgle quests even after purchasing all the recipes, scab sensors, cookbooks, and decorations. This would also reward players who invest excessive amounts of time in the game with the ability to carry just a little bit more loot on their continuing adventures.
Please, sir, I want some more.
Number 3.
The secret to fighting most aerial enemies is to use ranged weapons, but sometimes you've got no choice but to take them on with your melee weapons, and due to the nature of the 3-hit combo damage modifier, this sort of combat can become extremely frustrating. A single strike melee attack while airborne could help to balance out these sorts of combat situations with a damage cap on the attack at 100% to discourage its overuse as an effective combat strategy when compared to the preferred method of using ranged weapons to exploit the flying creature's weak points. Because sometimes you run out of arrows, and trying to survive against a swarm of bug juice blasting fireflies while using a melee weapon is nearly impossible, but a 100% damage dealing air attack could go a long way towards easing some of the frustration around fighting the flying creatures.
There you are again, throwing your hands up in the air like you just don't care. Care, damn it!
Number 2.
Grounded's adventure platforming is one of its most enjoyable game mechanics. Sprinting, jumping, and basic movement flow so responsively that when combined with the precision hitboxes on most of the environment, it makes platforming around the yard or across player-built obstacle courses more pleasant than it really should be when compared to many other survival games. But it could be better in a few ways. First and foremost, a new glider. Not an umbrella that floats haphazardly down from the sky like Mary Frickin' Poppins.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
But a glider like this. This is a glider. This is an umbrella. A parachute at best. And considering that there's an entire equipment slot dedicated for gliders, it should not be the only glider option available in the game.
I'm just saying.
Second, sliding. And it doesn't even have to be one of those full-on baseball slides like you find in most first-person shooter games, though that too would be cool. It could be more like the Monster Hunter slide, where it only works on certain angles to create a downhill slide effect that builds momentum. Maybe even weave it into the building mechanics, allowing players to use angled roof pieces to construct momentum launching slide cannons, to take advantage of the speed determined by the angle and the length, much like the momentum mechanics that already exist in the Ziplines, but in slide format. And finally, climbing/combat gloves that would allow players to use stamina to climb almost any surface around the yard. These could be a later game reward, granting more mobility options for navigating the yard upon reaching a certain point along the game's critical path. Gloves could also serve as an unarmed melee weapon damage modifier for the punching combat, and the punch combat system could also potentially be looked at for adaptation into the 3-hit combos.
Number 1.
If you ever watch my live streams over on Twitch, then you knew this was coming, a tactical roll. This mechanic could add an extra layer of flavor to the block timing themed, triple hit combo related combat system. The combat roll or somersault could cost stamina, which would prevent it from being overly exploited, and when combined into the current combat system, could mix up the pacing and be used to create a rock paper scissors style component to the enemy AI attacks. In this system, the enemy creatures would have certain moves that either have to be perfect blocked, dodged with a directional combat roll, or jumped over to avoid being staggered. But to be honest, these sorts of combat changes require a ton of animation work, not to mention the programming side of actually implementing them into the game. And considering 1.0 is basically a month away, my dreams of a more in-depth combat system in Grounded might have to remain dreams.
Yesterday, you said tomorrow, so just do it! Make your dreams come true!
But hey, those are just suggestions, Tiny Pirate Gaming suggestions. Thanks for watching, and...
See you, chump.
What did you think of these suggestions? Do you have any suggestions of your own? Let me know in the comments what your dream feature or content add-on to Grounded would look like, because I always enjoy discussing the ways that
Grounded world can be infinitely expanded on.
And if you're a fan of Grounded-themed, Grounded-related content presented in discussion and tutorial formats, then you've found the right channel, because that's basically all that I do here. So if that interests you, then defeat the like button with a tactically timed 3-hit combo, and I hope that this video earned your subscription today. You can also follow me on Twitch for live streams, Twitter for random channel news, and join the Tiny Pirate Gaming Discord for discussions on Grounded gaming, content creation, and more, along with me and the rest of the #Tiny Crew. So whether I see you here in the comments, over on the Twitch sphere, or someplace else across the Streamiverse, just know that I appreciate all of your support, and thank you so much for watching. Until next time.
Arg, matey, watch your step. There be a tiny pirate here.